Today I will be reading an original Georgian diary. Sadly, the cover is detached. Here's the publisher's stamp. The Life and Opinions of Tristram Shandy, Gentleman, by Laurence Sterne, Volume 3, printed in 1809. No, I think I said I would write 2 volumes every year, provided the vile cough which then tormented me, and which to this hour I dread worse than the devil, would but give me leave. And in another place, but where I cannot recollect now, speaking of my book as a machine, and having my pen and ruler down crosswise upon the table, in order to gain the greater credit to it, I swore it should be kept a-going at the rate these 40 years, if it pleased but the fountain of life to bless me so long with health and good spirits. Now, as for my spirits, little have I to lay to their charge, nay, so very little, unless the mounting me upon a long stick, and playing the fool with me 19 hours out of the 20, for be accusations, that on the contrary, I have much to thank him for. Cheerily have ye made me tread the path of life, with all the burdens of it, except its cares, upon my back. In no one moment of my existence, that I remember, have ye once deserted me, or tinged the objects which came in my way, either with a sable or with a sickly green. In dangers ye gilded my horizon with hope, and when death himself knocked at my door, ye bade him come away, and in so gay a tone of careless indifference did ye do it, that he doubted of his commission. There must certainly be some mistake in this matter, quoth he. Now there is nothing in this world I abominate worse than to be interrupted in a story, and I was that moment telling Eugenius a most tawdry one, in my way, of a nun who fancied herself a shellfish, and of a monk damned for eating a mussel, and was shewing him the grounds and justice of the procedure. Did ever so grave a personage get into so vile a scrape, quoth Death. Thou hast had a narrow escape, Tristram, said Eugenius, taking hold of my hand as I finish my story. But there is no living, Eugenius, replied I, at this rate, for as this son of a whore has found out my lodgings. You call him rightly, said Eugenius, for by sin, we are told, he entered the world. I care not which way he entered, quoth I, provided he be not in such a hurry to take me out with him. For I have 40 volumes to write, and 40,000 things to say and do, which nobody in the world will say and do for me, except thyself. And as thou seest, he has got me by the throat, for Eugenius could scarce hear me speak across the table, and that I am no match for him in the open field. Had I not better, whilst these few scattered spirits remain, and these 2 spider legs of mine, holding one of them up to him, are able to support me, had I not better, Eugenius, fly for my life? 'Tis my advice, my dear Tristram, said Eugenius. Then, by heaven, I will lead him a dance he little thinks of, for I will gallop, quoth I, without looking once behind me, to the banks of the Garonne, and if I hear him clattering at my heels, I'll scamper away to Mount Vesuvius, from thence to Joppa, and from Joppa to the world's end, where if he follow me, I pray God he may break his neck. He runs more risk there, said Eugenius, than thou. Eugenius's wit and affection brought blood into the cheeks from whence it had been some months banished. 'Twas a vile moment to bid adieu. In he led me to my chaise. Allons, said I. The postboy gave a crack with his whip. Off I went like a cannon, and in half a dozen bounds got into Dover. Chapter 2. Now hang it, quoth I, as I looked towards the French coast. A man should know something of his own country too, before he goes abroad. And I never gave a peep into Rochester Church, or took notice of the dock of Chatham, or visited St. Thomas at Canterbury, though they all three lay in my way. But mine, indeed, is a particular case. So without arguing the matter further with Thomas or Becket or anyone else, I skipped into the boat, and in 5 minutes we got under sail and scudded away like the wind. Pray, Captain, quoth I, as I was going down into the cabin, is a man never overtaken by death in this passage? Why, there is not time for a man to be sick in it, he replied. What a cursed liar! For I am sick as a horse, quoth I, already. What a brain! Upside down, heyday! And cells are broke loose, one into the other, and the blood and the lymph and the nervous juices, with the fixed and volatile salts, are all jumbled into one mass. Good God! Everything turns round in it like 1,000 whirlpools. I'd give a shilling to know if I shan't write the clearer for it. Sick, 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 sick. When shall we get to land, Captain? They have hearts like stones. Oh, I am deadly sick. Reach me that thing, boy. 'Tis the most discomforting sickness. I wish I was at the bottom, madam. How is it with you? Undone, undone, undone. Sir? What? The first time? No, 'tis the second, third, sixth, 10th time, sir. Heyday. What a trampling overhead. Hollo, cabin boy. What's the matter? The wind chopped about. 'Sdeath! Then I shall meet him full in the face. What luck! 'Tis chopped about again, master. Oh, the devil chop it. Captain, quoth she, for heaven's sake, let us get ashore. Chapter 3. It is a great inconvenience to a man, in a haste, that there are 3 distinct roads between Calais and Paris, in behalf of which there is so much to be said by the several deputies from the towns which lie along them, that half a day is easily lost in settling which you'll take. First, the road by Lille and Arras, which is the most about, but most interesting and instructing. The second, Amiens, which you may go if you would see Chantilly, and that by Beauvais, which you may go if you will. For this reason, a great many choose to go by Beauvais. Chapter 4. Now, before I quit Calais, a travel writer would say it would not be amiss to give some account of it. Now I think it very much amiss that a man cannot go quietly through a town and let it alone when it does not meddle with him, but that he must be turning about and drawing his pen at every kennel he crosses over, merely, on my conscience, for the sake of drawing it, because if we may judge from what he has been wrought of these things by all who have wrought and galloped, or who have galloped and wrought, which is a different way still, or who, for more expedition than the rest, have wrought galloping, which is the way I do at present, from the great Addison, who did it with his satchel of schoolbooks hanging at his ass. There is not a galloper of us all who might not have gone on ambling quietly, on his own ground, in case he had any, and have wrought all he had to write, dry shod as well as not. For my own part, as heaven is my judge, and to which I shall ever make my last appeal, I know no more of Calais, excepting the little my barber told me of it as he was whetting his razor, than I do this moment of Grand Cairo, for it was dusky in the evening when I landed, and as dark as pitch in the morning when I set out. I would lay any travelling odds that I this moment write a chapter upon Calais as long as my arm, and with so distinct and satisfactory a detail of every item which is worth a stranger's curiosity in the town, that you would take me for the town clerk of Calais itself, and where, sir, would be the wonder? Was not Democritus, who laughed 10 times more than I, town clerk of Abdera, and was not, I forget his name, who had more discretion than both of us, town clerk of Ephesus? It should be penned, moreover, sir, with so much knowledge and good sense, and truth and precision. Nay, if you don't believe me, you may read the chapter for your pains. Chapter 5. Calais, Calatium, Calusium, Calicium. This town, if we may trust its archives, the authority of which I see no reason to call in question in this place, was once no more than a small village, belonging to one of the first Counts de Guienne, and as it boasts at present of no less than 14,000 inhabitants, exclusive of 420 distinct families in the Basse-Ville, or suburbs, it must have grown up, by little and little, I suppose, to its present size. Though there are 4 convents, there is but one parochial church in the whole town. I had not an opportunity of taking its exact dimensions, but it is pretty easy to make a tolerable conjecture of them. For as there are 14,000 inhabitants of the town, if the church holds them all, it must be considerably large. And if it will not, it is a very great pity they have not another. It is built in form of a cross, and dedicated to the Virgin Mary. The steeple, which has a spire to it, is placed in the middle of the church, and stands upon 4 pillars, elegant and light enough, but sufficiently strong at the same time. It is decorated with 11 altars, most of which are rather fine than beautiful. The great altar is a masterpiece in its kind. It is of white marble, and as I was told, near 60 feet high. Had it been much higher, it had been as high as Mount Calvary itself. Therefore, I suppose, it must be high enough in all conscience. There was nothing struck me more than the great square, though I cannot say it is either well paved or well built. But 'tis in the heart of the town, and most of the streets, especially those in that quarter, all terminate in it. Could there have been a fountain in all Calais, which it seems there cannot, such an object would have been a great ornament. It is not to be doubted the inhabitants would have had it in the very centre of this square. Not that it is properly a square, because 'tis 40 feet longer from east to west than from north to south, so that the French in general have more reason on their side in calling them places than squares, which strictly speaking, to be sure, they are not. The town house seems to be but a sorry building, and not to be kept in the best repair. Otherwise, it had been a second-rate ornament to this place. It answers, however, its destination. It serves very well for the reception of the magistrates, who assemble in it from time to time, so that 'tis presumable justice is regularly distributed. I had heard much of it, but there is nothing at all curious in the Corgain. 'Tis a distinct quarter of the town, inhabited solely by sailors and fishermen. It consists of a number of small streets, neatly built and mostly of brick. It is extremely populous, but as they may be accounted for from the principle of their diet, there is nothing curious in that either. A traveller may see it to satisfy himself. He must not omit, however, taking notice of La Tour de Guet upon any account. It is so called from its particular destination, because in war it serves to discover and give notice of the enemies which approach the place, either by sea or land. But 'tis monstrous high, and catches the eye so continually you cannot avoid taking notice of it if you would. It was a singular disappointment to me that I could not have permission to take an exact survey of the fortifications, which are the strongest in the world, and which from first to last, that is, from the time they were set about by Philip of France, Count of Boulogne, to the present war, wherein many reparations were made, have cost, as I learnt afterwards from an engineer in Gascony, about 100 million livres. It is very remarkable that at the Tête de Grave lane, and where the town is naturally the weakest, they have expended the most money, so that the outworks stretch a great way into the campaign, and consequently occupy a large tract of ground. However, after all that is said and done, it must be acknowledged that Calais was never upon any account so considerable for itself as from its situation, and that easy entrance which it gave our ancestors upon all occasions into France. It was not without its inconveniences also, being no less troublesome to the English in those times than Dunkirk has been to us in ours, so that it was deservedly looked upon as the key to both kingdoms, which no doubt is the reason that there have arisen so many contentions who should keep it. Of these, the siege of Calais, or rather the blockade, for it was shut up both by land and sea, was the most memorable, as it withstood the efforts of Edward III a whole year, and was not terminated at last but by famine and extreme misery. The gallantry of Eustace de Saint Pierre, who first offered himself a victim for his fellow citizens, had ranked his name with heroes. As it will not take up above 50 pages, it will be injustice to the reader not to give him a minute's account of that romantic transaction, as well as the siege itself, in Rapin's own words. Chapter 6. But courage, gentle reader, I scorn it. It is enough to have thee in my power, but to make use of the advantage which the fortune of the pen has now gained over thee would be too much. No, by that all-powerful fire which warms the visionary brain and lights the spirits through unworldly tracks, ere I would force a helpless creature upon this hard service and make thee pay, poor soul, for 50 pages, which I have no right to sell thee, naked as I am, I would browse up the mountains and smile that the north wind brought me neither my tent nor my supper. So put on, my brave boy, and make the best of thy way to Boulogne. Chapter 7. Boulogne. Ah, so we are all got together, debtors and sinners before heaven, a jolly set of us, but I can't stay and quaff it off with you. I'm pursued myself like 100 devils, and shall be overtaken before I can well change horses. For heaven's sake, make haste. 'Tis for high treason, quoth a very little man, whispering as low as he could to a very tall man that stood next to him. Or else for murder, quoth the tall man. Well thrown, sighs Ace, quoth I. No, quoth a third, the gentleman has been committing. Ah, ma chère fille, said I, as she tripped by from her matin. You look as rosy as the morning. For the sun was rising, and it made the compliment the more gracious. No, it can't be, quoth a fourth. She made a curtsy to me. I kissed my hand. 'Tis debt, continued he. 'Tis certainly for debt, quoth a fifth. I would not pay that gentleman's debt, quoth Ace, for £1,000, nor would I, quoth Sighs, for 6 times the sum. Well thrown, sighs Ace, again, quoth I. But I have no debt but the debt of nature, and I want but patience of her, and I will pay her every farthing I owe her. How can you be so hard-hearted, madam, to arrest a poor traveller going along without molestation to anyone upon his lawful occasions? Do stop that deaf-looking, long-striding scoundrel of a scarce sinner, who is posting after me. He never would have followed me but for you. If it be but for a stage or two, just to give me start of him, I beseech you, madam, do, dear lady. Now in truth, 'tis a great pity, quoth mine Irish host, that all this good courtship should be lost, for the young gentlewoman has been after going out of hearing of it all along. Simpleton, quoth I. So you have nothing else in Boulogne worth seeing? By Jesus, there is the finest seminary of the humanities. There cannot be finer, quoth I. Chapter 8. When the precipitancy of a man's wishes hurries on him ideas 90 times faster than the vehicle he rides in, woe be to truth, and woe be to the vehicle that it's tackling. Let him be made of what stuff you will, upon which he breathes forth the disappointment of his soul. As I never give general character either of men or things in colour, the most haste, the worse speed, was all the reflection I made upon the affair the first time it happened. The second, third, fourth, and fifth time I confined it respectively to those times, and accordingly blamed only the second, third, fourth, and fifth postboy for it, without carrying my reflections further. But the event continuing to befall me from the 5th to the 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th time, and without one exception, I then could not avoid making a national reflection of it, which I do in these words, that something is always wrong in a French post-chaise upon first setting out. Or the proposition may stand thus: a French postilion has always to alight before he has got 300 yards out of town. What's wrong now? Diable! A rope's broke, a knot has slipped, a staple's drawn, a bolt's to whittle, a tag, a rag, a jag, a strap, a buckle, or a buckle's tongue went altering. Now, true as all this is, I never think myself empowered to excommunicate thereupon either the post-chaise or its driver, nor do I take it into my head to swear to the living God I would rather go afoot 10,000 times, or that I will be damned if ever I get into another. But I take the matter coolly before me, and consider that some tag, or rag, or jag, or bolt, or buckle's tongue will ever be wanting, or want altering, travel where I will. So I never chafe, but take the good and the bad as they fall in my road, and get on. Do so, my lad, said I. He had lost 5 minutes already in alighting in order to get a luncheon of black bread, which he had crumbed into the chaise pocket, and was remounted, and going leisurely on to relish it the better. "Go on, my lad," said I, briskly, but in the most persuasive tone imaginable, for I jingled a 4-and-20 sous piece against the glass, taking care to hold the flat side towards him as he looked back. The dog grinned intelligence from his right ear to his left, and behind his sooty muzzle discovered such a pearly row of teeth that sovereignty would have pawned her jewels for them. Just heaven, what masticators, what bread! And so, as he finished the last mouthful of it, we entered the town of Montreal. Chapter 9. There is not a town in all France which, in my opinion, looks better in the map than Montreal. I own it does not look so well in the book of post roads, but when you come to see it, to be sure, it looks most pitifully. There is one thing, however, in it at present very handsome, and that is the innkeeper's daughter. She has been 18 months at Amiens and 6 at Paris, in going through her classes, so knits and sews and dances, and does the little coquetries very well. A slut, in running them over within these 5 minutes that I have stood looking at her. She has let fall at least a dozen loops in a white thread stocking. Yes, I see. You cunning gypsy. 'Tis long and taper, you need not pin it to your knee, and that 'tis your own, and fits you exactly. That nature should have told this creature a word about a statue's thumb. But as this sample is worth all the thumbs, besides, I have her thumbs and fingers in at the bargain, if they can be any guide to me. And as Jeanneton, withal, for that is her name, stands so well for a drawing, may I never draw more, or rather, may I draw like a draught horse, by main strength, all the days of my life, if I do not draw her in all her proportions, and with as determined a pencil as if I had ever her in the wettest drapery. But your worship shews rather that I give you the length, breadth, and perpendicular height of the great parish church, or a drawing of the facade of the Abbey of St. Austebert, which has been transported from Artois hither. Everything is just, I suppose, as the masons and carpenters left them, and if the belief in Christ continues so long, will be so these 50 years to come, so your worship and reverences may all measure them at your leisures. But he who measures thee, Jeanneton, must do it now. Thou carriest the principles of change within thy frame, and considering the chances of a transitory life, I would not answer for thee a moment, ere twice 12 months are past and gone. Thou mayest grow out like a pumpkin and lose thy shapes, or thou mayest go off like a flower and lose thy beauty. Nay, thou mayest go off like a hussy and lose thyself. I would not answer for my Aunt Dinah, when she was alive, faith, scarce for her picture, were it but painted by Reynolds. But if I go on with my drawing after naming the son of Apollo, I'll be shot. So you must e'en be content with the original, which, if the evening is fine into passing through Montreal, you will see at your chaise door as you change horses. But unless you have as bad a reason for haste as I have, you had better stop. She has a little of the devote, but that, sir, is a tierce to a 9 in your favour. Help me, I could not count a single point, so I'd been piqued and repiqued and capoted to the devil. Chapter 10. All which being considered, and that death, moreover, might be much nearer me than I imagined. I wish I was at Abbeville, quoth I, wherein only to see how they card and spin. So off we set. But the carders and spinners were all gone to bed. Chapter 11. What a vast advantage is travelling, only it heats one. But there is a remedy for that, which you may pick out of the next chapter. Chapter 12. Was I in a condition to stipulate with death, as I am this moment with my apothecary, how and where I will take his clyster? I should certainly declare against submitting to it before my friends, and therefore I never seriously think upon the mode and manner of this great catastrophe, which generally takes up and torments my thoughts as much as the catastrophe itself, but I constantly draw the curtain across it, with this wish that the disposer of all things may so order it, that it happen not to me in my own house, but rather in some decent inn at home. I know it, the concern of my friends, and the last service of wiping my brows and smoothing my pillow, which the quivering hand of pale affection shall pay me, so crucify my soul, that it shall die of a distemper which my physicians is not aware of. But in an inn, the few cold offices I wanted would be purchased with a few guineas, and paid me with an undisturbed but punctual attention. But mark, this inn should not be the inn at Abbeville. If there was not another in the universe, I would strike that inn out of the capitulation. So let the horses be in the chaise exactly by 4 in the morning. Yes, by 4, sir, or by Genevieve. I'll raise a clatter in the house, shall wake the dead. Chapter 13. Make them like unto a wheel is a bitter sarcasm, as all the learned know, against the grand tour, and that restless spirit for making at which David prophetically foresaw would haunt the children of men in the latter days, and therefore, as thinketh the great Bishop Hall, 'tis one of the severest imprecations which David ever uttered against the enemies of the Lord. And if he had said, I wish them no worse, look, than always to be rolling about so much motion, continues he, for he was very corpulent, is so much unquietness, and so much of rest, by the same analogy, is so much of heaven. Now, I, being very thin, think differently, and that so much of motion is so much of life, and so much of joy, and that to stand still, or get on but slowly, is death and the devil. Hollo ho, the whole world's asleep. Bring out the horses, grease the wheels, tie on the mail, and drive a nail into that moulding. I will not lose a moment. Now, the wheel we are talking of, and we're into, but not we're on to, for that would make the Ixion's wheel of it. He curse of his enemies, according to the bishop's habit of body, should certainly be a post-chaise wheel, whether they were set up in Palestine at the time or not, and my wheel, for the contrary reason, must as certainly be a cartwheel, groaning round its revolution once in an age, and of which sort, were I to turn commentator, I should make no scruple to affirm, be a great store in that hilly country. I love the Pythagoreans much more than ever I dare tell my dear Jenny, for their ancient Greek, their getting out of the body in order to think well. No man thinks right whilst he is in it, blinded as he must be with his congenial humours, and drawn definitely aside, as the bishop and myself have been, with too lax or too tense fibre. Reason is half of it sense, and the measure of heaven itself is but the measure of our present appetites and concoctions. But which of the two, in the present case, do you think to be the mostly in the wrong? You certainly, quoth she, to disturb a whole family so early. Chapter 14. But she did not know I was under a vow not to shave my beard until I got to Paris. Yet I hate to make mysteries of nothing. 'Tis the cold cautiousness of one whose little souls from which Lysias have made his estimate wherein he settled forth, that one Dutch mile cubically multiplied will allow room enough and to spare for 800,000 millions, which he supposes to be as great a number of souls, counting from the fall of Adam, as can possibly be damned to the end of the world. From what he has made this second estimate, unless from the parental goodness of God, I don't know. I am much more at a loss what could be in Franciscus Ribera's head, who pretends that no less a space than one of 200 Italian miles, multiplied into itself, will be sufficient to hold the like number. He certainly must have gone upon some of the old Roman souls, of which he had read, without reflecting how much, by a gradual and most tabid decline, in a course of 1800 years, they must unavoidably have shrunk so as to have come, when he wrote almost to nothing, in Lysias's time. Who seems the cooler man? They were as little as can be imagined. We find them less now, and next winter we shall find them less again, so that if we go on from little to less and from less to nothing, I hesitate not one moment to affirm that in half a century, at this rate, we shall have no souls at all, which being the period beyond which I doubt likewise of the existence of the Christian faith, 'twill be one advantage that both of them will be exactly worn out together. Blessed Jupiter, and blessed every other heathen god and goddess, for now you will come into play again, and with Priapus at your tails, what jovial times! But where am I, and into what a delicious riot of things am I rushing? I who must be cut short in the mist of my days, taste no more of them than what I borrow from my imagination. Peace to thee, generous fool, and let me go on. Chapter 15. So hating, I say, to make mysteries of nothing, I entrusted it with the postboy. As soon as ever I got off the stones, he gave a crack with his whip to balance the compliment, and with the frail horse, trotting, and a sort of an up and down of the other, we danced it along to Ailey a Clocher, famed in days of yore for the finest chimes in the world, but we danced through it without much music, the chimes being greatly out of order, as in truth they were through all France, and so making all possible speed from Alley au Clocher, I got to his score. From his score I got to Perquigny, and from Perquigny I got to Amiens, concerning which town I have nothing to inform you, but that I informed you once before, and that was that Jeanneton went there to school. Chapter 16. In the whole catalogue of those whiffling vexations which come puffing across a man's canvas, there is not one of the more teasing and tormenting nature than this particular one which I am going to describe, and for which, unless you travel with an avant-career, which numbers do in order to prevent it, there is no help, and it is this: that be you in ever so kindly a propensity to sleep, though you are passing perhaps through the finest country, upon the best roads, and in the easiest carriage for doing it in the world, nay, Was you sure you could sleep 50 miles straight forwards without once opening your eyes? Nay, what is more, was you demonstratively satisfied as you can be of any truth in Euclid, that you should, upon all accounts, be full and well, asleep and awake, nay, perhaps better? Yet the incessant return of pain from the horse at every stage, with the necessity thereupon of putting your hand in your pocket and counting out from thence 3 livres and 15 sous. Sou by sous puts an end to so much of the project that you cannot execute above 6 miles of it, or supposing it is a post and a half, that is but 9, were it to save your soul from destruction. I'll be even with 'em, quoth I, for I'll put the precise sum into a piece of paper and hold it ready in my hand all the way. Now I shall have nothing to do, said I, composing myself to rest, but to drop this gently into the postboy's hat and not say a word. Then there wants 2 sous more than to drink, or there is a 12 sous piece of Louis XIV, which will not pass, or a livre and some odd liards to be brought over from the last stage, which Monsieur had forgot, which altercations, as a man cannot dispute very well asleep, rouse him. Still is sweet sleep retrievable, and still might the flesh weigh down the spirit and recover itself of these blows. But then, by heaven, you have paid but for a single post, whereas 'tis a post and a half, and this obliges you to pull out your book of post roads, the print of which is so very small it forces you to open your eyes, whether you will or no. Then Monsieur le Cure offers you a pinch of snuff, or a poor soldier shoes you his leg, or is shovelling his box, or the priestess of the cistern will water your wheels. They do not want it, but she swears by her priesthood, throwing it back they do. Then you have all these points to argue, or consider, over in your mind, in doing of which the rational powers get so thoroughly awakened that you may get them to sleep again as you can. It was entirely owing to one of these misfortunes, or had passed clean by the stables of Chantilly, but the postilion, first affirming and then persisting into my face, and there was no mark upon the 2 sous piece, I opened my eyes to be convinced, and seeing the mark upon it as plain as my nose, I leapt out of the chaise in a passion. So saw everything as Chantilly in spite. I tried it but for 3 post and a half, but believe it is the best principle in the world to travel speedily upon, for a few objects look very inviting in that mood. You have little or nothing to stop you, by which means it was that I passed through Saint Denis without turning my head so much as on the other side towards the abbey. Richness of their treasury, stuff and nonsense, baiting their jewels, which are all false. I would not give 3 sous for any one thing in it, but Shade-ass lantern. Not for that neither, only as it grows dark it might be of use.